Today I'm talking about Harry H. Corbett. Harry H. Corbett was an English actor whose best remembered role was of Harold Steptoe in the beloved TV comedy sitcom Steptoe and Son. His co-star was Wilfrid Bramble, who played his father Albert. In 1962, scriptwriters Ray Galton and Alan Simpson asked Harry and Wilfrid to appear in a TV play as a father and son in the rag and bone trade. It was so successful they commissioned a full series. The popular TV show ran from 1962 until 1965, and then from 1970 until 1974. There were also 2 Steptoe movies. The success of the show was bittersweet for Harry. It gave him fame and money, but he ended up being typecast. He felt that he lost out on serious acting roles, and he mostly had to stick to comedy. He received an OBE in 1976. Harry was a heavy smoker. He died of a heart attack in 1982 at the age of 57. He is buried in a graveyard in Penhurst, East Sussex. Wilfrid died just under 3 years later in 1985 from cancer at the age of 72. He was cremated and his ashes were scattered in Streatham.
Hello, I'm talking to Warwick Holding, who was born in Brighton, and he was a bit of a rag and bone man. And also does stand-up comedy. Were you a fan of Steptoe and Son?
I was actually, yeah. Mainly probably because I like comedy and because I was a bit of a rag and bone man in a sense. I had a second-hand shop not far from here, and we used to travel round all the tips of Sussex, collecting our stock and buying stuff from the tipped men. So a modern day, I actually remember the rag and bone men's still coming round Brighton as well back in the 70s.
Did they have horses?
I can't remember. I think they may have done, but I remember hand carts, and I remember them. You know, I mean, to be honest, we didn't have much to give them. We normally got our stuff from them, to be honest with you, back in the day. But and I also liked him, but you know, loved Steptoe and Son just because it was a good sort of groundbreaking comedy for me. Not the first series as much, but the second one was, you know, something I remember more. I think it was because it was in colour in the 70s, and I just remember it being one of those first comedies that that you took a catchphrase from, and, you know, and kids at school would be shouting "Harold" or you know, "You dirty old man" and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's like one of those, you know, and you go through the ages, and there's a few of these comedies in your life that you remember the catchphrases, and that was one of them for me. But he was quite an interesting bloke as well. He had quite an interesting life, I think. So, you know. And
do you know much about his life?
I do a little bit. I know that he was a Marine, and he fought over in Japan. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but I know that he had history where he actually had active combat, and you know, reportedly, you know, had to kill people and stuff like that. And I also know that he deserted as well.
Yeah.
And done a bunk when it got too much for him, and I think he handed himself in at some point.
Yeah.
So I know a little bit about him. Yeah.
So he started acting. He was a serious actor. He was actually a Shakespearean actor, and then he got the role in The Offer that started the whole Steptoe and Son thing off, didn't it? But he had to change his name a little bit, didn't he? Because there was Harry Corbett, who did a puppet show with Sooty.
So that he wasn't in like mistaken for a bloke who had his hand up a little bit behind. He used the name Harry H, and the reason for that was H, and I quite like this because it was a bit of an old Cockney thing that it stood for anything, which was a Cockney way of saying anything. So it's Harry H. Yeah. And you know, Corbett for anything.
Yeah. And then he ended up in Penhurst, didn't he, in Sussex?
He did. Yeah. I think after he. I remember not seeing him in a lot of things. I know he did some films, like a Carry On film and Jabberwocky, I think, which I think might have been Monty Python connections to that. But he got stereotyped quite a lot, I think. So he didn't really get any serious work after that. Not serious, but he was stuck in that sort of role. And you know, and I remember he did the films as well, Steptoe and Son and Steptoe and Son Ride Again, which were quite good as well. Yeah, but he did end up. I think he died in Hastings or something like that, you know, which is Sussex based. I've always been a fan of, you know, anybody in Sussex who's sort of in comedy, especially. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for chatting about Harry.
No worries, thank you.
During the 1964 general election, there were fears that because of the huge popularity of Steptoe and Son, voters would stay at home to watch it rather than go to the polling booths. Harold Wilson, the Labour leader, asked the BBC Director General if the episode of Steptoe and Son could be moved to a later slot. This request was granted and Harold Wilson won.